Hey everyone, I hope you guys are doing well. In today's video, we are going to be implementing the functionality to search for properties that are on the market. So to get started, I'm in my server in the property file, and we're going to create a new function. I'm going to create this function underneath get property and apartments by property ID, and we're going to call this get properties by bounding box. So let's create the structure for what the body of the request should look like. And I'm going to create this structure down beneath all of the others. We're going to call it bounding box input, and it will have these 4 different fields. Now in the function, we're going to make sure that the body of the request is valid. And then we will query our database to find properties that are within that bounding box and are on the market. And then we will return those properties to the user. Now let's go into main.go and let's create a new post endpoint within this property party. The endpoint will be search, and we will call the get properties by bounding box function. Now with that done, start up your server and navigate to your application code. Now here in our application code in the constants file, let's add in the endpoint that we just created. So I'm going to put that underneath get properties by user ID. And now let's go to the different screens where we need to call this endpoint. So one of those screens is going to be the search screen. In the search screen, we're going to need to import useQuery and Axios. And here we can get rid of properties. And now let's create our query to query that endpoint. We'll call this query search properties and give it the key search properties. Enabled will be false, and if there's a bounding box in the route params, then we will call our endpoint, passing in the bounding box. And essentially we're just doing what we are doing here. So let's get rid of this, except we need to leave set location. And underneath set location, let's refetch our query. And now let's start replacing properties for search properties.data.data. Now let's get rid of this set properties prop for map. And we're actually just going to use the same query here within map. So let's copy it and go there. Now we can get rid of set properties here. Same thing here. And let's put this query underneath navigation. Now the only thing that needs to change is that this needs to be bounding box. And we're going to check if the length of that is greater than 0. And now we can get rid of this variable here. And let's add in these imports. Now search for any place that we are using set properties. And instead of doing this, we will just refetch from our query. And then I noticed earlier that we need to change some of our styles, or really just get rid of one field, and it's this height field. And also within this map component, let's go and change where we are mapping through map markers. So we will only map through them if properties exist. All right, so now let's test this thing out. First, let's just look up a location. So Italy. And now let's search using the map. Oh yeah, and let's go and change how we are navigating whenever we press on a map marker. So let's go to this handle marker press function and change some of our code. So here for latitude delta, we're only going to change it if the latitude delta is less than 4. And we're going to do the same thing for the longitude delta. So now we can test this out. All right, so that seems to be working. Now, whenever we press on a property card, we're going to be getting some errors because some of these fields are undefined. So we need to go change those. So let's get started with that. So to get started with that, let's go to the property details screen. And let's go and clean up our property type. so that we know what fields we have to work with. So open up that as well. So let's get rid of some of these fields, such as tags. And there's one called features. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this pets field. And let's make this about string optional. Website is also going to be optional. Description is going to be optional. And that should be good for now. Stars is something that we'll have to add in the future, but for now this is good. So let's go back to the property detail screen. And within this screen, let's go and import Axios and use query. And let's also import text from UIKitten. Now within the component, we can get rid of these two variables and we'll create a new query to get the current property. And let's add this as an import. Now for some reason we can't get the property. We're just gonna return that we were unable to get it in text. And here for this data component, we are going to say property.data.data. And now we need to go and change some of the code in these different sections. I'm gonna comment out these other sections so that if we get an error, they aren't coming from there. So now let's go to the property header section and let's navigate there in our app. So we'll just find a property and then we'll click on the property. Okay, so here we're getting that undefined is not an object, evaluating data.length. So let's go into the property header section, see what that's all about. So within this section, all that I can see is that we might not have a property name. So let's change that. And let's go create this new style, default margin top. And that'll just be a margin top of 10. And now here for this row, let's add styles.default margin top. And I think that I was getting that error because I didn't save this property detail screen. So let's check this out now. All right, so that's working. Now what about whenever the property doesn't have a name? So let's just go and check out Florida. And here this doesn't have a name, so we aren't going to see that. So with that section taken care of, let's go and do the pricing and floor plan section. Navigate there. And in this one, it looks like all of this is good. The only thing that we can really change is the available date because all of those are just today. So let's go and change that down here. We will get rid of this and replace it with this. So as you can see here, the dates are now displaying correctly. So let's go and choose another section to alter. So the next one will be the about section. And here we're getting this error, so we need to go and change some stuff. So here we don't have property.features or tags, so we can just get rid of this fragment and all of the code within it. And then about is going to be an optional field. So let's say if property.about, then we will return that. Otherwise, we will return null. And now we can get rid of some of these different imports. And here within this row, we're displaying the property name. So let's just make sure that that exists before we display it. And we can also get rid of everything below features text. So this doesn't have an about section, so let's go create one for it. And that is 555 California Street. So view my properties, the black deck. And I guess this is the closest thing to an about section. So we might just have to change about to description instead. And then here I'm going to add a website as well so that we can test it out. whenever we get to that section. And let's save this. Now we'll go back and search this area. And we still don't have that about section, so let's change this to description. And here we'll say property.description. And there we have it. And now we can go into the property type and get rid of the about field. So with that displaying, let's go back to the property details screen and look at the contact section. First thing that we'll do is refactor this format phone number function, and it's going to take in a calling code. And we can get rid of this, and here we will just have the calling code. And we'll put a plus in front of it and a space after it. So right now it's displaying as undefined, so let's go and pass that in. So next to property phone number, let's add in the calling code. And here with this touchable opacity, let's only display this if there is a website associated with the property. Now let's go into OpenURL and refactor this. So we no longer need this because we are validating that the website is a URL, and we can modify this so that we only open the URL, and if we get an error, we need to specify to the user that we couldn't open the website. Now let's go back here. Even though we're checking here that the website exists, let's just check here as well to get rid of this error. And that should be good for contact session. So now let's go back to property detail screen and do the amenities section. And here we are getting all this data because it's static. So let's go change that. So really we're splitting this up into two different sections. One section is the general property amenities, and then the other is the apartment amenities. So this top section here, we're going to wrap in a fragment, and that's going to represent the property amenities. So that's going to be everything here. And let's grab a bulleted list and put that in as well. And we're going to change this so that it displays the property amenities. And we're going to get rid of the heading and make sure that property amenities actually exists. So here, let's make that condition clear. And let's get rid of all of these different bulleted lists. And now we need to get the apartment amenities. So let's go create some logic up above to do that. So I'm just going to create an array and then a map. And I'm going to loop through all of the apartments in the property. And for each apartment, that's going to have an array of amenities. So I'm going to go through all of those. And if the map doesn't contain the current amenity, then I'm going to push that amenity to the apartment amenities and set in the map that that amenity is now true. And now down here, let's get rid of this stuff. And we'll just leave one bulleted list. And we'll wrap this in a fragment and do something similar as to what we did above, except with the apartment amenities. And here let's specify or null or else null. We're going to change this data to the apartment's amenities, and we're not going to have a heading. Now let's go back to another section. This one's the lease and fees. So for this one, let's change pets to pets allowed. We're going to get rid of this flat list, and then we'll display a general text card which calls this function which we need to create. So before we create this function, we'll have to go into our pet values file. And for all of these values, we're going to assign these to different variables. So that will look like this. And we'll change those values to match those variables. Now let's go back to the lease and fees section, and let's create that function, which will just return the appropriate text based upon the value of pets allowed. And we'll have to import these. And here I'm going to go back and save this so we can actually see what we're creating. Now let's get the lease lengths and the min and max deposits. And to do that, we'll just loop through all of the apartments in the property and get those values. And with the min and max deposit, we can create a variable for the body of a general text card, which will just display the min and max of the property. With those created, let's go and implement those. Here we have parking. Let's create something there. So property.parking, or parking fee. And let's throw everything in a fragment here. And here we'll specify property.parking fee. And now the last thing that we need to change is the data within this flat list. So this will be the lease lengths. And here we can change this so that it represents the down deposits. So this one is done. Let's go to another section. So this one is all good. Let's go to the property details screen and let's choose this last section. Here we're saying property.rent low. Not really sure why I put that. Let's change that to reviews, and instead of returning null, let's just say something like there's no reviews, be the first one to review this property. And let's import text, which we already have, so we don't need to import it. And let's check that out. Okay, sweet. So with that done, let's just go test it out on another property. You know, one thing that I'm not really liking right now is that on this card, there is a studio and then there's 0 beds. So a studio is 0 beds. So let's go and change some of the logic that we are using on the card. And same thing with this bottom card. The min and max price are 400, so it should only be displaying once. So yeah, let's go there. So that's going to be card, and then I think within that, yeah, it's going to be card information. So here, let's create a function to get the lows and highs for the rent and bedroom. So if the type is equal to rent, then we will use this logic to display the rent high and rent low. And if it's equal to bedroom, we'll use this logic. Now here we can change this to say get low and high text, passing in rent. And we can get rid of this $sign. And we'll do the same thing here with the beds, just passing in bedroom. Now let's only display this if property.name exists. And here we no longer have tags, so we'll use included utilities instead. And I think that that looks a lot better, and it's giving us the behavior that we want. So let's check this out on another property. and it's looking good, guys. So that is going to be it for this video. I hope that you guys found this helpful, and thank you for watching. Have a great day.